What's up, duelists? We're now over halfway through 2023, and I think it's time to revisit the Edison format tier list. Of course, I had to revisit not only the Edison format tier list, but the way we even think about the Edison format tier list. I'm changing the game, alright, folks? I'm changing the game. I uploaded a tier list recently showcasing my opinions on what I thought was the best deck, and a lot of people bitched about it, and I was just like, God damn it. I guess I need to make a more quote-unquote objective tier list, even though tier lists are fucking subjective to begin with. So, yeah, here we are. This is what we're doing. This is my opinion-removed tier list. You're fucking welcome. All right, this is what you wanted. This is the content you guys thought you needed. But honestly, I think this is the best I can do at giving you as close to an objective tier list in a format this wide open and this balanced. We've got 5 different tiers here. All right, we've got you can win a tournament with this deck, and it's been proven that that can happen. That's going to be tier 1. Tier 2, it means you can top with this deck if you have bracket and draw luck, or just one of the two, honestly. That means the deck is probably not guaranteed to win. It's hype if it does win a tournament. It possibly can win if you're a little bit lucky. More lucky on average than you would need with one of the ones in the top deck or top tier. The third tier is probably can't top. Let's just be real, probably can't top. The fourth tier is actually not tier 4 by any means. It has potential. So it's decks that I think could potentially be in one of the top 3 tiers, but we just don't fucking know because the format is so young, it's so fresh, it's constantly evolving, the metagame is constantly changing. Some of these decks could be really good, some of these decks could be really bad. Who knows? And then the 5th tier is just like, get the fuck out tier. It's just no. It's just shut the fuck up. We don't want this. And as usual with all these tier lists, I've invented the game. I've reinvented the tier list game. I'm going to be showing you guys deck lists for every single one of these decks I have in here. And there's a fucking billion. So get ready for it. Get ready for it. You see how long this tier list is? Look how lengthy it is. Look how fucking long it is. Okay, it's going to be a long vid. Settle in, everybody. Settle in. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you're probably still going to fucking disagree with me anyway. And if you want to prove me wrong, show up to RBET Moreno Valley or RBET Orlando. RBET Moreno Valley, signups are filling up for this. The prizes are insane. Very big Edison tournaments. The once-in-a-lifetime events of the once-in-a-lifetime. You get what I'm saying. That didn't make any sense. We're out here. Let's just get right into the tier list. All right, first deck I'm going to rank is going to be Dragonglarbo. This deck is going to go into Ken top with bracket or draw luck. I think this deck has an insanely high ceiling, and it also has an insanely low floor. Your average game with this deck, you're going to be doing nothing. I don't know how to say it. Your deck's just going to do nothing. Obviously, you can have the insane draws where you just like draw 40 cards because of super rejuvenation, and then you OTK your opponent turn 2 because they drew nothing. But a lot of the time when you play this deck, your draws are going to brick, and that's just the nature of it. Either that or you're going to get really close to having an OTK hand, but you're going to miss that one crucial piece. This is Ghost Rider's first place tournament list from RBET. 2, 3, something fucking... He won a RBET with this list. I'm showing you guys the sauce. This is his list. It's a first place list, so it can win. It can top and it can win, but I think you need to get really lucky with a deck like this in order to do that. Strong deck. If you don't know how it works, watch my other videos on it. We got a whole ass tier list we got to get through. All right, next deck we're doing. Next deck we're doing is Aliens. Aliens is in probably can't top tier. So yeah, this is a list I think someone sent me. It's kind of a cool list. Aliens is a deck that looks to abuse Alien Ammonite to summon Cosmic Fortress Golgar to sort of bounce your continuous spells and traps and reuse them over and over again. I think this deck is interesting. I just don't think it's good enough to top. I just don't. It hasn't put up the numbers. People have tried it. People have gotten close. Like, people have had good bracket runs. I've hosted tournaments where I was giving consolation prize to the highest placing alien players, and even then it was still very difficult for alien decks to really break through. There were a lot of people working on the list. There were a lot of people grinding that shit, and it just was not coming together. So I think this deck goes into probably can't top tier. I would like for that to change because I like this deck a lot. I think this is a really sweet deck. Realistically, into today's metagame, not going to happen. All right, next deck. What have we got? Junkfrog. So this one's a little bit of a 2-for-1. I have pure Junkfrogs and can top with bracket luck and draw luck. But the list I'm showing you is actually Junk Hero Frog. So I'm going to go ahead and knock 2 off of this real quick, because I think just Junkfrog on its own is not very good. Well, it's not very good. It's just like, it's just worse. But as far as Hero Frogs goes, I think Hero Frogs is a lot better. And the primary difference between these two decks, the deck having heroes and the deck not having heroes, is Miracle Fusion. You just have a card that lets you not be stuck to your normal summon. Whereas the Junkfrog deck, it's so much more weak to like pulling the rug. It's so much more weak to even stuff like bottomless trap hole. Just getting your normal summon like shoved is really, really tough for the Junk Synchron decks to play through the pure Junk Frogs. But Junk Hero Frogs, I think, has a lot more power and can definitely win a tournament. This list is actually a first place tournament from a PS5 list, PS5 tournament that happened last weekend. So yeah, obviously this deck is very good. It did pretty well at Nats. I don't think the Hero Frog lists at Nats were all playing Junk Synchron, or if they were only playing one. But I do think that Hero Frogs with Junk Synchron tech is definitely can win. And I think pure Junk Frogs is like, you'd have to get pretty fucking lucky and just dodge the people who are playing Pulling the Rug. All right, next deck on the tier list, we got Fish. Where the fuck? Oh, it's all the way over here. I'm going to put Fish in has potential. Okay, we'll zoom out a bit so you guys can see that. We'll get back into it in a second. I'm going to put it in has potential for now. I think Fish is a deck that, like, Super Ancient Deep Sea King is very busted. And obviously the frog cards with Monarchs, like, it's pretty hard to go wrong with that. But it's a lot of moving parts, you know? If you draw awkwardly, you draw some of your Garnets, you're not able to set up your OTK, your opponent has like a Titanial or an Oppression you can't clear. This is one of my lists of the deck. I think this is one of the more consistent lists that I've played. I've played a lot of different lists. I've played lists with Instant Fusion. I've played Hero Fish with like Miracle Fusion. I've played like Mausoleum. I've played a whole bunch of stuff with Fish. I think this is probably one of the more consistent routes you can go. You have some Kaiases to break, and then you have the Super Ancient Deep Sea King to go for the combo. I think ultimately this is going to struggle with some of the top decks. It's going to struggle with some of the, you know, I don't know. I just think that there's potential for this deck to do something. It just fucking hasn't. So I'm like, maybe it goes into probably can't top. But I think there are ways you could maybe fix this deck. I think there are some ways you could approach this deck that would be really interesting. There was a list recently with Fish Depth Charge that I know did kind of well. So I don't think it's truly solved yet. So keep working. If you enjoy this card, keep grinding, keep trying new things. Eventually something will crack with this deck, I think, because this card is just inherently very strong. All right, next deck. What do we have next? We have Neospatians. So for the no tier, I'm not even going to show you guys deck lists for the no tier because the decks are just so fucking garbage. Don't play Neospatians. Granbull's a great card, so it's kind of misrepresentative for me to use Granbull as the little thumb tab here for you. But I think the pure Neospatian decks are fucking garbage. I think they're not even worth playing. It is kind of funny that they have topped a couple of times at some of my tournaments, but usually like it's through like insane luck circumstances. I'm not even going to put it in props can't top because I like realistically, like even though it has topped, I cannot in good faith recommend anyone play that deck in a tournament. Where are we going? Oh, that's the fish list. All right, next one is Monster Mash. I made a video on Monster Mash recently. I'm going to put it in probably can't top. And the reason being is because like the deck is so good on paper, but then in practice you get into circumstances where you have a Gallus or you have a Witch and you summon them and you'll have a 1 in 30 chance or a 1 in 20 chance or something like that you hit the spell, and you just hit the spell. And the difference between that and like a regular deck is like if I'm playing a regular deck, I don't have a 1 in 20 chance of just automatically losing the game. Like I'm automatically hand looping myself. Whereas when you play this deck, there are a lot of circumstances that come up where you have like a 1 in 20 chance where you just automatically hand loop yourself. And this actually happened to me in a recent tournament. I was playing this exact list and I had 32 cards left in my deck. I had already seen one of my Avarices. I activated Gallus, and it was the difference between me winning and losing the game, and I milled my other Avarice. And then game 2, I summoned Witch of the Black Rose, and I had 21 cards left in my deck. I had 1 Avarice left, and I just hit the 1 Avarice, and I just lost. And it was again, a circumstance where I was like, if the effect resolves, I win the game on the spot. And if it doesn't, like if it misses, then I lose the game on the spot. And unfortunately, so much of this deck hinges on these two effects resolving in every variation of the deck that I've seen. And if they, for some reason, miss, which happens, like it just happens, you immediately lose the game. So I think it's unrealistic to say that you could take this and consistently top with it, because you just have that inconsistency factor of like randomly missing with those two cards. Now, if you knew for a fact that your Avarices were not going to be on top of your deck when you activated those cards at any point during the match, the deck is good. The deck is genuinely good, and it probably moves into the second tier here. But because of that random chance, I can't in good faith put it in the next tier up. All right, next deck on here, we've got Black Salvo. This is a list I'm going to put in, or a deck I'm going to put in has potential. I know Powerful Duelist Randage. I'm not going to show you a list because we're planning on doing something with this in the near future. So stay tuned, subscribe, make sure you're tuned in if you like Black Salvo. Randage has been working on a list that he's been absolutely killing it with. So I think that this is definitely a strategy that has potential. I think there's a lot of different ways you can approach Black Salvo, and it's a really strong strategy. You have access to dark monsters, you have one card synchros. It definitely has all of the stuff necessary to become a good deck. Even your facilitator, Dekoichi, is like a pretty good card. So I think it has all the tools to be a good deck. But the lists have not really been adapted to 2023. They've not really been like cooked long enough. They've been kind of undercooked, and so stay tuned for that list. I'm not going to leak it quite yet in this video, but it'll be in a future video with Randage, hopefully. So yeah. Where were we after that? Oh yeah, next deck, Stardust Assault Mode. So this recently top 8'd in Italy list. I'm not going to show you that list because I think that list is like arguably worse than my list. This is my list. It's very similar to this list. Stardust Assault Mode is a deck that I think probably can't top realistically or consistently. Your opponents have to misplay pretty hard against the deck for it to like take control, and the deck has some like pretty glaring weaknesses. So the first glaring weakness is you commit a lot of resources into going Stardust, then activating Assault Mode Activate. And then after you've commit all those resources, if your opponent just draws one DD Crow, you fucking lose. And yeah, you can side Iron Wall, but that means you need to draw your full combo plus Iron Wall. And then you need to defend that Iron Wall. Like your opponent can just have like a bait, a Space Typhoon, and a DD Crow, and then they'll trade 3 for 4 with you. So the DD Crow weakness, the Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer weakness, those two cards really hinder Soul Release to a different extent. They really hinder the successfulness of this deck, or the successfulness of this deck. And then the second thing is the brick potential. This card, if you draw it, it's just constantly stuck in your hand. Like there's just nothing you can do about it. And if you draw both of them, like your deck just does nothing. So I think realistically, expecting this to be consistent enough to top tournaments is just not realistic. If you're looking to play like a Flamvel deck, I'll get into this when I talk about Flamvels, but Assault Mode Activate is like a supplementary payoff, maybe interesting, but you definitely the bigger payoff is going to be something like Rekindling. I think Assault Mode Activate is it's a sus card. I'm going to be honest, it's a sus card. All right, next list. Six Samurai. This is a deck that I've been playing actually a lot lately, and this is a list I made a video on recently. I think this deck is legit. I personally think that like more often than not, you're going to have a pretty decent hand with Six Samurai, just because you can play full copies of United Gateway, and then you're seeing them pretty consistently thanks to Upstart Goblin. The issue with this deck is it's like power ceiling is very high, but like the bad draws are very low. And they include a lot of like really weak monsters. So you lean really heavily on your power cards. And if your opponent has comparable power cards, they're just going to run you over a lot of the time. So I think like expecting this to consistently top it's just unrealistic. The deck has some like really weird weaknesses, like Dust Tornado, like a very common card. Cyber Dragon is a very difficult card for this deck to deal with. When you don't draw Grandmaster, you immediately notice the weaknesses in your deck because you just become this normal summon reliant, like almost a Gladiator Beast deck. Like your monsters are a little bit better than Gladiator Beast monsters, but not by much. You do have some powerful cards like Spirit and Hand of the Six Samurai. Like these are good cards. Yaichi is actually a really insane card. In my video with this recently, I went +4 with Yaichi, but expecting this deck to consistently top, I think it needs a little bit more innovation, a little bit more work before it can consistently top. There's one thing I do want to mention. If you have double gateway and you have mass driver, this is something that I've been like kind of toying with, which is like a burn version of this deck. If you have double gateway mass driver, you can infinite damage kill someone because gateway can add back from the grave. So as long as you have double gateway and driver and a normal summon, that's an OTK. That's actually an FTK. Food for thought. I don't know. Maybe that's like something terrifying and existentially threatening, or maybe it's just like way too inconsistent to expect to find double gateway plus mass driver plus a normal summon. 4-card FTKs are pretty rare, so something to think about though. Something to think about. All right, next deck, Bubble Man. So I gotta shout out Kalindi, KJH. You may know him from Super Smash Bros. Melee. He invented this Bubble Man strategy where basically, this isn't his exact list. I think he plays Return from the Different Dimension as well. But basically the point of this deck is it plays kind of like a hero beat deck, but then you OTK people with Bubble Man because Bubble Man is very fast. So instead of playing cards like Honest, instead of playing cards like Elemental Hero Ocean, we're going more for this like one-turn kill setup. And the way it works is like if you have Bubble Man, Diva, and Miracle Fusion, it's actually a lot of damage. It's actually like 7,900 damage. Like you have a lot of 3-card like OTK setups, which are pretty insane. It's a very, very surprisingly fast and threatening deck. It can destroy people out of nowhere. I think it has a lot of potential. I think it needs a little bit more labbing, but it did top 8 at Nats, which is, as of right now, the biggest Edison tournament since the Shonen. So it did top 8 at a really big tournament with very little representation. I think Bubble Man strategies, definitely we will see more of them in the future. I think they will pick up a lot more. Do not sleep on this deck. It's very good. All right, shout out Kalindi, of course. Next deck, Evil Hero Dark Gaia decks. Another deck I think that has a lot of potential. So Bubble Man, a lot of potential. Evil Hero Dark Gaia. This is a very old list that I have here. I think you could play this in a million different ways. I don't know why this is the list that I had pulled up, but I think this is the list that I had the best success with. In terms of like actual testing, I tested this deck a lot versus a lot of people because it was one of the decks that I was like thinking about bringing to a tournament. I don't remember which tournament it was. I was thinking about bringing it to a tournament. I think this deck is very good. I think this deck has a lot of potential. I think people are kind of sleeping on it. It's like sort of a Dragon Turbo deck, sort of an OTK deck, but it can also weirdly play a grind game thanks to Demise and like Doom Caliber Guardian, like. And Gaia Plate's like not a bad like soft boss monster. Jujutsu Master is like pretty good against the meta. Like there's a lot of like weird strengths to this deck. You have Fossil Dyna in the main, actually pretty good against frogs. Like you have a lot of tools. And you have a lot of synergy, and like you have some pretty strong engines, and your deck is fairly consistent. I think it has a lot of potential. It hasn't seen a lot of results. I mean, it's seen a few results here. I know Cadigan's list, Who Needs Meta's list has seen some success. I am not a fan of that list personally. I think it's a little bit underpowered. I think if you're playing Dark Gaia, you got to full send it. Like you just got to play the balls to the wall, like really strong shit. Like play to the deck's strengths. Don't play this like half-ass like fucking mediocre Diva Hero style list where you're summoning like a 3,000 Dark Gaia. Summon the big boy, summon a 6,000 Dark Gaia and just end people's shit. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think this deck has a lot of potential. I think a lot of people can work something out on this deck list, or not deck list, but type of strategy. All right, next deck. Next deck is Chain Burn. I don't have a Chain Burn list pulled up, but they don't really change all that much. It's just like 3 of all the good Chain Burn cards, and then you play like Cyber Valleys and Battle Faders and shit. And I think it's just a deck that probably can't top. I think the meta is just too hostile for it. I think some of the top decks, which we'll get into later, Black Wings, etc., Icarus Attack is just too crushing for the deck. I think you're just going to get End-Phase dusted a lot post-board. You can't really beat Royal Decree very consistently. The deck is just inconsistent. It's missing a lot of its power. Like you have Ceasefires at 1, Magic Cylinders at 1, even Chain Strikes like semi-limited. I I do think Burn is slept on as a strategy in general, but I think that Chain Burn in general is not the best way to approach it, in my opinion. All right, next deck, Jinzo. I think Jinzo has a lot of potential. I've been playing a shit ton of Jinzo. I think this deck is fucking nasty. This deck just like fucking high rolls the shit out of people. Obviously, it's one of the most powerful decks to open Future Fusion in because your Future Fusion is oftentimes actually a 1.5 card OTK, which there are very few cards in Edison format that can boast that strength. Like, literally, there are very few decks that have a legitimate 1 card OTK. Like, that is actually insane. And you do need a little bit more push for the damage, but there are so many like ways to just get that last few points of damage. Like, the 3 Jinzos is 7,200, and you just need 800 points of damage on top of that. And it not only is an OTK, but it's an OTK through almost every trap card in the game too, which is terrifying. Like, that is just like really good. I played almost this exact list in a video recently with Carpath. Ignore the sideboard. The sideboard is a fucking meme, but this main deck I've been very happy with. I played almost this exact main deck list in a video with Carpath recently, and we went like 5-0 or some shit like that. Like, the deck it's shockingly good, and I think it has a lot of potential. I think people are sleeping on the Jinzo OTK strategy a little bit too much. Okay, next deck. What are we doing? All right, next deck, Amaryllis Burn. I actually think Amaryllis Burn is a proven and good threat. I think it's like legitimately a strong deck. Not a lot of people play it, and it does have some weird weaknesses. Like, it can be weirdly weak to Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. There are a few other cards that can be weirdly weak too, but it's just such a resilient strategy. I think Royal Oppression, it's like weirdly weak to Royal Oppression. But it's such a resilient strategy, and you get to play like some really high power level cards to their fullest potential, namely Titanial, Hidden Armory, and Phoenix Ring Windblast. I think this like combination of like cards is disgusting. On top of that, you have a built-in engine, Snatch Steal. You have like just so many ways to just like blow people out with like Morphing Jar or Fiend Comedian or whatever. This is the 3rd place list from Nats. This is straight out of Compton, his 3rd place list from Nats. And I think this list is very good. I think it's very well tested. I think it's very solid. And I think this deck definitely has the potential to be a top tier meta threat. I think it has the potential to win tournaments, especially in the hands of a good player. Carpath has had success with this. He topped an RBET with this as well. He kind of put the deck on the map. I think this deck is a little bit slept on, maybe because Amaryllis is so expensive. And because the people piloting it are kind of like meme worthy. Like, a lot of good players don't pick this deck up for some reason, but I think this deck is terrifying. It's actually pretty resilient too to a lot of like common OTK setups, because Titanial does a really good job of just locking down. Like, if you have Titanial Amaryllis, it means your opponent can't Bryonic you, they can't Dark Arm you, they can't Brain Control you. Like, a lot of the reversal and OTK like common setups in the format get shut down by Titanial so quickly, especially with Amaryllis, because it allows you to have those 2 bodies in play to negate targeting effects. Definitely one of the strongest decks in today's metagame. I think it's definitely a top tier meta threat and totally has the potential to win a tournament. Diva Zombie. So this is going to be a bit of a contentious pick for me. I actually don't think this deck is that good. I think it needs to get lucky to win. There's some obvious insane upsides in playing a deck like this. Number one, it's probably one of the best Dark Arm Dragon decks in the game. It's probably one of the best decks at punishing bad players. So, like, your first few rounds of your tournament are usually going to be pretty easy, but I think the deck is, like, slightly slower than some of the contenders in the same space, and it's slightly more clunky than some of the contenders in the same space. Like, if you're looking at this deck, this is Beast Mode's top 8 list from RBET IRL. It's got 7 recruiters. You got Sangan, Goblin Zombie, Mystic Tomato, and Pyramid Turtle. This is an easily exploitable weakness. I mean, you just get one of these Kaiast and you're going to struggle. Like, that's pretty much the name of the game, right? Like, if you're just going second and, like, you get Kaiast with this deck, it's really fucking hard a lot of the time to come back. I do think that this deck has some powerful OTK setups. Like, obviously, Diva plus Goblin Zombie is really strong. But there are other decks that have powerful OTK setups with Deep Sea Diva as well that are less normal summon reliant. Like, I don't need to have both Goblin Zombie and Deep Sea Diva. Now, I think there's room for innovation with this deck. I think the ultimate offering lists are very interesting. I think they have a lot of potential. But on top of that, like, offering comes with its own consistency issues. Because you have offering, do you start adding cards like Illblood to your deck? And then you have these clunky draws where you draw Illblood and you don't have offering, or you draw offering, you don't really have payoffs for it. It's just weird. It's just weird. Like, how do you approach a deck like this without it becoming too clunky? It's very difficult to balance. And I do think a lot of good players have had a lot of success with this deck, and I do think it has potential to top or even win if you are getting lucky. But I think as the metagame develops, I will not be surprised to see this deck kind of like be not as good as we expected it to be. It's interesting. It's interesting because at the beginning in 2020, nobody was playing this deck. Literally nobody. And we had to throw a tournament. We threw Pumpkin, the first Pumpkin of Games tournament, and we offered like a secret first Goblin Zombie to the person who placed the highest with Diva Zombies. And I think someone won the tournament with Diva Zombies. And that's when we started like thinking about it as like a real deck. But prior to that, we were thinking about it. We were thinking this deck's not very good. And a lot of it was about like its matchup into Quick Draw was really bad. Quick Draw obviously is a lot less popular right now, so naturally you don't have that Predator. Its matchup into Frogs is not amazing. Like, you'd think it'd be a lot better than it is, but because you're so normal summon reliant in this specific version, it's just not the best. And it's a little bit difficult to play into Frogs if they have a lot of like Battle Fader, that type of effect. That stuff can really stop you. But yeah, Return, Dark Arm, still really powerful cards. I think it's safely. These are not in order, by the way. I should have mentioned that. None of these decks are in order. I think it's safely within the Ken Top Withdraw or Bracket Luck tier for me personally. That's where I'd put it. Yes, it has won some tournaments. Yes, it has had success, obviously, as have a lot of these decks. Even some of the ones that I'm ranking lower. But I just think it's not as good as the list. Like, I legit don't think it's as good as like Amaryllis, which is, I don't know if that's like crazy or copium or whatever the fuck it is, but I think Amaryllis is like objectively a stronger and more resilient deck than Diva Zombies. And moving forward into more solved metagames, I think Amaryllis will have an easier time than Diva Zombies. Alright, next deck. Hero Beat. And here's another fucking crazy unpopular opinion. I don't think Hero Beat is as high a threat in an open metagame or in a more solved metagame or in a metagame where people know how to play against the deck. I don't think it's the top tier. I think it takes a lot for Hero Beat to win a tournament. I legit think it takes a lot for this deck to win a tournament. I've got two lists for you. This is I believe James Ark's Diva Hero Beat list, and I've got this list, which is Pro Storm's just Little City, more of the skyscraper type stun list that some people might be more accustomed to seeing. They each have their strengths. They each have their weaknesses. I think that both of them are similarly positioned in the metagame. Maybe the Diva list is a little bit better positioned because it does have those Diva plays. I think moving forward, what I would like to see from these types of decks is more of like either a blend with the Bubbleman style or just leaning more into the Bubbleman stuff. Because I think the biggest issue with Hero Beat is like just how low the ceiling or how low the power ceiling is. I think it's just a lower power ceiling than other decks like Frogs, Frog Hero, Diva Hero, Black Wings. I think those decks just boast a much higher power ceiling. You don't have a Dark Arm Dragon. You don't have like a way to summon multiple monsters outside of Miracle Fusion, which is a very good card. Don't get me wrong, but this deck also has like a lot of like weirdly strange weaknesses. Like it's just a little bit underpowered, I think. And it doesn't line up as well as you might think into certain matchups. One thing that is lucky, or not lucky, but can contribute to Hero doing well is an abundance of Blackwings. I think it doesn't have necessarily a bad Blackwing matchup. So this one is less to do with draw luck because I think the deck is very consistent. It's consistently like solid, but it's not like consistently broken powerful. But I think you need a little bit of bracket luck because there are some decks that will just like go over the top of this deck and kind of like make it look silly. Frogs, for example, or like Fairies, I think does a very good job of just like honestly, like from the Fairy perspective, playing against Hero Beat, it's a pretty favorable matchup for Fairies. It's not an auto win by any means, but it's definitely a favorable matchup. I think Diva Hero does a better job of going over the top. They have those main deck Snowman Eaters. They have cards that pose huge threats, and then on top of that, they can just like randomly OTK you whenever they feel like it. They can set up Stardust Dragon. Stardust Dragon's actually a very difficult card for this deck to consistently deal with. That's why they have to max D prisons and play Wind Blasts or compulsories or whatever, just because Stardust is such an issue for this deck. So I think some of the more powerful decks can definitely go over the top, but with the right bracket look, I think it can definitely, it's definitely consistent enough to top or win, but I think it just needs the right bracket look. Unlike some of the decks that are in the top tier, like I think Amaryllis can like legitimately win through just about anything. That's why I'm placing it there. Okay, next list. I've talked about Hero Beat enough. Quick Draw Synchron. So Quick Draw is, you know, the hallmark of this format. It is the deck that Jeff Jones won the Shonen Jump Championship with in 2010. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to place it and probably can't top. I think the issue with this deck is clear. It is weak to Deck Devastation Virus in a way that cannot be accounted for. Your only comeback card after Deck Devastation Virus is Pot of Avarice, and that doesn't do a great job playing into a resolved Deck Devastation Virus because you draw cards, and Deck Devastation Virus is going to check those cards you draw. Deck Devastation Virus has made it difficult for a lot of these like little monster synchro decks. Diva Zombies is another deck that I think is a little bit weaker to Deck Devastation Virus than people may understand. So yeah, I think that's the biggest issue with this deck. This is Feng Shui's top 8 list. This is one of the most recent top 8 in quick draw decks. It leans into the Monarch strategy a little bit. You've got the main deck Soul Exchanges. You've got one quick draw, which is really all you need. You can tutor it with Sangan. You've got Debris Dandy, which is powerful. You've got Titanial Access, which is powerful. And I don't necessarily think this deck is bad, right? I don't think it's terrible, but it suffers from a lot of the same issues that a lot of the other decks have. And while it does have some random good matchups here and there, like it's pretty good against Diva Hero, it's pretty good against Diva Zombie. I think it's decent versus Fairies. It's just so bad against Blackwings. And I think when you have a bad Blackwing matchup, it's just like, that's so tough. That's just so tough. You can't really have a bad Blackwing matchup in this and expect to top just because of how popular that deck is. Even though Blackwings is not the most popular deck right now, it is still very, very popular. This deck also does a pretty good job against Frog Hero. So if we do, in some weird world, see Blackwings like disappear completely, then Quick Draw, it could potentially move up to, with bracket luck, it can win. But as of right now, I don't think you can expect to play in a tournament and not face Blackwings at least once. So you're going to a tournament with Quick Draw with like just probably understanding that you're going to be taking a loss to a Blackwing deck at some point, which is, I can't recommend that in good faith. I just can't. I'm fortunate because the deck is very fun, but I just think that's where it's at right now in today's metagame. Next deck I want to rank, Norlaris. So Norlaris, I have 2 Norlaris strategies for you here. I have the Dark Dragon Norlaris strategy. This is my personal list. It's pretty similar to everybody else's list. The only difference is I've got the triple deck dev, triple infernal tech in the side. And then this is the most recent topping Norlaris Vayu deck from a PS5 tournament last weekend. Norlaris Vayu also won Nats in Europe as well. It won the Nationals event in Europe, which was a very big tournament. I believe he went like 10-1 or some shit like that. So I don't have that list pulled up, but it was similar to this list, but like clunkier. I think this list refined a lot of those issues. So I think Norlaris is a good deck. I genuinely think it is a strong deck, especially when people aren't siding DD Crow and Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. When people start siding those cards more, the deck does get worse, but I think it has what it takes to win a tournament just because of how easy it can play out of like almost any bad situation. One of the insane things about Phantom of Chaos plus Norlaris is like it kind of covers the deck's weaknesses in a strange way. Like particularly in the Dragon one, you're weak to Royal Oppression, right? So if you're weak to Royal Oppression, how do you beat that? Well, you just discard a Norlaris, and then you Phantom, and then you nuke, and then you end phase bring out a bunch of dragons. And it's just like, it's pretty much a shutout situation. You also get easy virus access, which makes you pretty favorable against almost all of the little synchro decks, like zombies, frogs, that kind of stuff. Even against fairies, you can play through Herald in a lot of instances thanks to Deck Devastation Virus. You can play through a lot of different things that would normally give you trouble. Post board, when people side in their crows, you just bring in the deck devs, you deck dev their crow, and then from there you proceed to like Phantom copy Norlaris, do the crazy thing. The Dark Creator is one of the strongest cards in the format. It's inherently ridiculously powerful. It's an obvious 3 of inclusion in both of these strategies. It's just an additional win con that can come back from crazy loss situations. In the Dragon list in particular, it's actually part of a 2-card OTK. If you have Future Fusion Dark Creator, that is a 2-card OTK. You just send 5 Darks, you summon Dark Creator, you bring back Red Eyes, and then you bring back a Dark Horse, and it's 8100 damage, that's insane. Like, just having 2-card OTK out of nowhere is pretty busted. So, yeah, I think this deck is legit. It plays almost exclusively really strong cards. It does have some weaknesses, obviously. It's not a perfect deck, but I think in most metagames, the Norlaris decks have what it takes to win. Unless you're having a lot of people main decking Dimensional Fissure, main decking DD Crows, which is definitely not the current state of the format. I think this deck definitely has what it takes to win a tournament. All right, next deck I want to talk about, which is similar, is Lightshorn. Where the fuck is... It's not showing up. God damn it. Okay, there it is. Hold up. Oh, no. We got ahead of ourselves. Lightshorn. I think Lightshorn can top with bracket luck. I'm going to show you this list. This is just a generic-ass Lightshorn list. The lists we've been seeing lately have Glorious Illusion. I tried those a lot. I found it was pretty fragile, even with the Glorious Illusion. I still had issues with my normal summon getting bottomless and me just losing. And in general, I think the deck is really fucking fragile. I think you need to get pretty lucky to win with a deck like this. That being said, if you do get lucky, it is one of the better decks to get lucky with, because if you just mill Wolf all day, like, that's insane. Milling a Wolf is, like, ironically really fucking good against a lot of decks. Like, against Hero Beat, it's usually puts you in a winning position immediately. Like, they have to waste a lot of resources to deal with that Wolf. A lot of their cards don't effectively answer it. Celestia is obviously a pretty strong card. JD's ridiculous. You know, you get to min-max your Raikos. Your Raikos are probably at their best in this deck. You get to play Lilo, which is a busted card, you know. You just get to play a lot of busted cards. But that being said, you do run the risk of bricking if you get too lost in the sauce, if you fly too close to the sun. You do brick really hard in this deck. You have a lot of potential brick hands, and I think that's the issue. Is like you're high rolling. Are my mills going to be good? I think if you want to play a milling deck, I think Amaryllis is just a better milling deck. There is another better milling deck later in the tier list that we'll get into. But I think if you want to play something a little bit more consistent, yeah, Amaryllis is probably good. Vayu Turbo is probably good. And then, yeah, there are a few other ones we'll get into. Next deck. Let's just move on. Moving on from Lightshorn. I think you need to get lucky to top with Lightshorn. It might even probably drop down to props can't top because it's just like so fucking inconsistent, especially when I play it. Goddamn. All right, the next deck we're going to talk about is Flamvel. I think Flamvel, you probably need to get lucky to top with it, but if you do get lucky, like, the deck is kind of ridiculous. Like, if you just resolve a Fire Dog and then draw Rekindling, like, doesn't get much better than that. Like, that's pretty fucking strong. The issue with the deck, of course, is Flamvel Magician. When you draw Flamvel Magician, this is a garbage list, by the way. Why is this the list I have pulled up? Normally, there's, like, Gravekeeper Spy and shit. Normally, there's some other shit going on. I don't know if Gravekeeper Spy is even, like, the truth or not, but Gravekeeper Spy kind of crushes Hero Beat, and it's pretty good against Blackwing, so yeah, obviously something to consider. I do like Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer in this deck. I know Souls Manic, one of the players who always plays this deck, also likes Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. But yeah, I just think the deck, you need to get a bit lucky with your draw sequencing, more so than your bracket, because I think the deck has, like, on paper, a lot of decent matchups. It's just in practice, when the deck is coming together, it just sometimes just falls a little bit short because you, like, draw one Magician too many. The Frog matchup is a little bit tricky. There's just some stuff with this deck that, like, you need to account for when you're going into a tournament. You need to, like, meta call it. So I would put this Flamvel in a has potential and also can top with draw luck. Like, if you're just playing the list that people have been playing, it can top with draw luck. But it also has potential to move up just because the matchup spread is so good and Rekindling is so good. So I think it's a solid deck. You could do a lot worse than play Flamvel. I've memed on it being bad in the past, but it's a solid deck. Right, next deck. Diamond Dude Turbo. Diamond Dude Turbo is a deck that I think has a shit ton of potential. I've been playing it a lot on stream, and the deck is crazy complicated and crazy good. Like, it's just crazy good. Some of the draws you're capable of having. This is the list I played most recently on stream. It's a Guardian, Iados, Dark Simorg list. It's just such a fun deck. It has a lot of OTK potential. It has a lot of just, like, crazy, like, advantage engine potential. You're able to stack really, really powerful hands. You can reuse Dark Arm Dragon because of Monster Reincarnation. You can reuse Chaos Sorcerer, whatever the fuck. Dark Samorg is just an absolute beast in this deck. I think this deck is a very interesting deck. One thing that I've always thought was interesting is that this deck was very popular in around this time period in the OCG. Like, they didn't obviously have the exact same ban list that we did, but a lot of top players in the OCG like said that this deck was legit around this time. And I saw a lot of lists that they were playing, and they're really complicated lists, but I think that the deck definitely has potential. And I think that they were onto something that we should probably be looking at. I think they were a little bit ahead of their time. The way the deck works is you set up Divine Sword, Phoenix Blade, and there's just like a lot of ways to utilize this to gain advantage. You banish your warriors like Karaz, Jane, even the heroes. You empty your graveyard for Guardian Iados. You set up your banish zone for return or DDR. If you use DDR, you can pitch that Phoenix Blade you added back. Special summon Karaz. Karaz target itself in the DDR. Build your own, draw 2 engine. You could also just do it to bring back Diamond Dude or bring back Stratos, bring back whatever. Dark Samorg also gets stuff banished. Dark Arm, Chaos Sorcerer. It like creates this sort of like perfect circle feeling. And the deck it's really, really solid once it gets going. So I think it has potential. I think people should definitely be looking more into that deck. All right, next deck, Ancient Gear. This is definitely a deck that can top with draw luck. I don't even think it really needs bracket luck. I just think it needs draw luck. I just think legit you need your opponent to not draw Cyber Dragon in both Game 2 and Game 3. Because I think this might be one of the best Game 1 decks. Like, Game 1, you should have a good matchup versus everything because of how ridiculously power crept the machine cards are. Machina Fortress is insane. It is such an insanely busted card by Edison standards. And you get to play 3 of them. And then you get to play 3 fucking Stratos guys who search for them. And then on top of that, Gear Town is absurd. And so is the Ancient Gear Gajiltron Dragon. A lot of people are playing Triple D Prison right now. This card punishes the shit out of that. Ancient Gear Beast doesn't care about Hamster, doesn't care about Raikou, doesn't care about Battle Recruiters. Insane versus Zombies. Having a good Game 1 matchup versus Battle Recruiters is rare. This deck definitely does that. I think this is like one of the scariest decks to play against. I never want to face this deck. No matter what I am playing, I never want to play against this deck because it is terrifying. This deck can just delete you out of nowhere. It's one of the best compulsory Regeki Break decks. And if a deck can use these cards, these hard -1s effectively, that is probably one of the best decks in the format. The only issue with this is that the Cyborg cards are so fucking insane versus decks. Cyber Dragon and System Down are 2 of the most powerful cards. Even Electric Virus, they're just so insane versus this deck. You need to get lucky in Game 2 or Game 3 and hope you dodge one of them because those cards are game ending. When they come down, when your opponent makes a 3000 Chimera Tech on you, it's usually almost impossible to come back. It's very, very difficult. So you have to position yourself to be able to play those types of grind games in post-board situations versus those very powerful sideboard cards. And I think for now, it just needs draw luck. It just needs draw luck for it to be like a tier 1 deck. And that's just my opinion on it as of right now. But it's a terrifying deck. I never want to play against this deck. I know actually Ardos, White Raven, he almost topped the last Arbet with it. I think he got 9th place or something. And he was playing Gaia Power, which was really interesting because Gaia Power with Machina Gear Frame and Double Fortress, which is a common setup, actually becomes an OTK. And it also allows your Gadgetron Dragon to attack over Sirocco with Collude in hand. So you can improve the Blackwing matchup with just that inclusion alone. This deck definitely has a lot of room to be innovated. I think he did some great jobs innovating it. I think it's one of the strongest decks in the format for sure. At least Game 1 for sure. All right, next deck. What's up next? Diva Hero. I think Diva Hero is just a very consistently powerful deck. This is the most recent list. Yeah, this is the most recent list that top baited that I thought had some interesting tech. Fishborg Blaster. Again, we're talking about turning Future Fusion into a 2-card OTK. Because of Fishborg Blaster, it is now a 2-card OTK. If you go Future Fusion, you send Fishborg and Malicious to reveal Absolute Zero. You normal summon Deep Sea Diva. So the 2-card OTK is Future Fusion, Deep Sea Diva. You summon Archer, you bring out Malicious, you bring out Fishborg, and then you make Arm Colossal. So you get a 2-card OTK out of that, which is fucking crazy. There are other ways to get 2-card OTKs. You can have Evil Guy, Malicious Diva as a 2-card OTK. Or 3-card. Yeah, you'd have to have Malicious and Grave, but yeah, it's a 2-card OTK. Yeah, the deck's just crazy. I think it's really good. It's really resilient. It's kind of hard to hate this deck out just because of how good it is at using Caius. Evil Guy Caius lets you go second. It's one of the best decks going second. The biggest issue with this deck is itself. It can brick. It can definitely brick. You're definitely flying a little bit too close to the sun, but even in your brick hands, you can fix them. Like it's usually like 1 or 2 cards, and then you fix your brick hand. Like let's say you draw a Mally. All you need is a Rhoda. All you need is like 1 or 2 cards to get going. And then all of a sudden, your brick hand becomes an OTK. It becomes an insane position. It's one of the easiest decks at summoning Stardust Dragon. It's one of the easiest decks at OTKing your opponent if they just have like a lone Caius in play. So it's like has an insane frog matchup, which not a lot of other decks can boast. I think it's just like one of the best decks in the format. I think anyone who tells you otherwise is probably huffing copium. It's definitely one of the scarier decks. Similar to Ancient Gear, I never really want to face Diva Hero because the good draws are just unbeatable. They're just insane. And the bad draws, all they take is one card, and then all of a sudden it becomes an unbeatable draw. So yeah, definitely one of the scarier decks, especially in the hands of a good player. I would definitely rank it in the can win a tournament because it absolutely can. I think it's won like a bunch of PS5 tournaments in SoCal, and obviously it got second place at Nats. It's topped literally almost every single RBET. It's just a very good deck. Okay, next deck I want to talk about is Gemini. Because this is one of the new contenders. This is one of the decks that everybody's talking about. This is BK Kids Club, kind of the deck creator. This is his list, top 16 from Nats. And then I've got a new list here. This is a Chaos Gemini list. I'm going to talk about both these lists in tandem. I think this deck is in a spot where, well, obviously, it has potential. I think it has a lot of potential. I think it could easily be a can win a tournament deck. I think it could be a top tier deck. It's a very skill intensive deck. It's very skill testing. It's a combo deck at heart if you're playing the Gigaplant stuff. But there's also potential for innovation, like I said, with like chaos stuff. You could take this and like make a more low to the ground resilient engine that's not necessarily playing the Lone Fire Gigaplants. You could play your own Royal Oppression in lists like this. You could play something like Gemini Soldier plus Dark Simorgh if you don't want to play Royal Oppression. There's a lot of different ways this deck could like open up just because of how powerful Reinforced Truth is. If you think about it this way, like end phase I'm activating Reinforced Truth, and then on my turn I summon the Gemini Soldier, and then I can get a light, a dark. I already have a wind. You're getting free advantage every single turn. This guy's really annoying once he's in play. I think this deck has a lot of potential. I think because of the power of Reinforced Truth into Gemini Soldier, you can do quite a bit. And then on top of that, Lone Fire Gigaplant Supervise in these style lists is still very strong. Blackroot Drago is an annoying card to deal with. Ultimate Offering is a broken card, especially when you can get all this added value from the second normal summon you get off your monsters. You can play through a lot of different trap cards thanks to Ultimate Offering, thanks to Gemini Spark. Gemini Spark's like one of the best cards in the format. So I think the deck is very good. I think it has a lot of potential. I think we're going to see more of it moving forward. I'm constantly impressed with it. I think all of the matchups are pretty solid, except I'm not really sold on the Blackwing matchup yet. That's something that I think could be good, could be bad. I'm not really sure. I haven't had enough time to specifically test it. Someone will have to let me know if they've been playing that deck a lot. All right, next deck, X Sabers is just going to go in no tier. I just don't think the deck has what it takes. I've played it a lot, and I think it's like not only is it a worse version of Fairy and Zombies, but it also is like a worse version of Rescue Cat Synchro, which we'll get into later as well. I'm not impressed with this deck. I'm not impressed with X Sabers. I think without Dark Soul and without Boggart Knight, you just struggle. You need 2 normal summons, and then you have to have a Fall Troll. If you just have the 2 normal summons, it's not enough. Unlike Diva Zombie, where if you have the 2 normal summons, like Goblin Zombie plus Diva, that is enough. But in X Sabers, you need two normals plus a payoff. And even Gotham Z-Call, like let's say I have 2 normals and a Gotham Z-Call, that's just 2 synchros for 3 cards. That's not even good. Like, it has to be specifically Fall Troll, or else it's not a good payoff. So, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. All right, next deck, Gladiator Beast. Just no, because I got a meme. I got a meme on the Gladiator Beast players. Fuck Gladiator Beast. All my homies hate Gladiator Beast. All right, next deck, KFC. KFC, I think, has a lot of potential. I don't think we've gotten anywhere close to optimizing this list. This is like just a very similar list to the first one that Carpath played in, I think the first tournament he brought it to. I think we're not anywhere near optimizing this deck. I think this deck has has a bunch of different routes it could go in. You could play Machina. You could play a heavier-handed Ancient Gear package. You could play a wide variety of cards. You don't even necessarily need to max out on Karaz like I have here. I think the nature of the deck, Debris Dandy into Gear Town, Ancient Fairy Dragon pop Gear Town, is just very powerful. Like, that synergy is ridiculously strong. So if we can figure out a way to like more consistently get that synergy going, you could even maybe mix it with Salvo. Something to think about. Maybe you don't even need to play the Debris Dandy stuff. I still think the Debris Dandy stuff is good, but you could play this in a lot of different ways as long as you can consistently make that Ancient Fairy Gear Town setup. There's a lot of stuff you could do in decks like this, and I think there's still a lot to be desired. If you're a deck innovator, a deck builder, that's definitely one of those decks that I think has a lot of potential and could potentially move up into can top with bracket luck. I could see it up that high. I could see it as low as quick draw, but I don't think the deck will ever be as bad as the decks in the get the fuck out tier. So, yeah, good shit. You could do a lot worse than playing that deck. Next deck is Wellydad. Wellydad is a deck that I think is insanely powerful. Not a lot of people are playing it. It is oftentimes a tightrope walk, trying to find the right combo lines and play the deck perfectly. It's a very difficult deck for me to play because I don't normally play like these synchro combo decks. I did play it in a tournament recently, and I think it showed how challenging playing this deck can be, and how like even tiny misplays can definitely fuck you up. But I think this deck has a much higher power ceiling than Diva Zombies does. I think it's just like has a higher power ceiling. The only issue is mostly right now, not a lot of people are exploring this type of strategy. This list isn't even the best list. There's a list going around right now that I played on stream yesterday, and you can check out the VOD for that stream, that has Beast of the Pharaoh. And you can set up some really crazy situations with Beast of the Pharaoh and Telekinetic Powerwell, and there's like a Deep Sea Dragon Lord Gishilnadon. There's some OTK setups with just one Powerwell and one Beast of the Pharaoh that are pretty crazy. And then on the stream when I was playing the deck, it made the deck look very fucking good. Like, the Beast of the Pharaoh technology in this deck was really, really strong. So I think the deck has a lot of potential for innovation. It has a lot of potential to become one of the top decks in the format. In my previous tier list, I've ranked it S tier based off power level and consistency alone. And I would honestly do that again if I didn't think that there was still potential to push the deck even farther than where it is in terms of deck building and stuff. All right, next deck. Rescue Cat. Yeah, I probably can't top. It probably can't top consistently. This is a Rescue Cat zombie list. And I was going to cover the plant zombies when I talked about this as well, because there are very similar decks going around with like Mystic Tomato, Goblin Zombie, and Mark of the Rose. I think plant zombies is can top with bracket or draw luck. It's similar to Diva Zombie in that it's very normal summon reliant, but it has a little bit of a higher ceiling because you have Titanial and you also have Mark of the Rose, which are broken cards. Those cards are much higher power level than like your average spell card, like your average Book of Life type card. But Rescue Cat, there are a billion configurations of Rescue Cat synchro decks, and I think that they all suffer from the same issue. And the issue is that Rescue Cat on its own is not a payoff, and even Monk into Cat on its own is not a payoff. It's just an Arcanite and a discard, and that's okay. Don't get me wrong, like that's okay, but it just struggles. It just struggles. And then on top of that, if you draw double Airbellum, this card is not a good card to draw. It's just not. It's a 1600 vanilla 99% of the time. Yes, sometimes you can connect with it. That's cool, but it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare that X-Saber Airbellum is connecting. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little sleepy. It's like 3 a.m. while I'm recording this shit. Yeah, Rescue Cat probably can't top. It's just a clunky synchro to combo deck. I wish it could top because I think Monk Cat is really cool. I actually also wish that we had this format with Rescue Cat at 2. That is like one of the changes that I would make about this format, is just like having 2 Rescue Cats or having 2 Monks. I feel like that would make the format a lot more fun. I think the deck got too heavily nerfed, but at the same time, like, yeah, whatever. Can't change it. Can't Can't change it. Props can't top. All right, next deck. We've got Dragons. Dragons best deck, baby. I think Dragons is like one of the best decks in the format. I think if you're playing hot, yeah, you can definitely win tournaments with this deck. It's won not only RBET, but it won the DDV this as well. And it's just really hard to go wrong with Future Fusion. It's just really, really hard to go wrong with this deck. It's so incredibly powerful. Drago's so incredibly powerful. DD Warrior Lady's so incredibly powerful. This is my list. I've played this in a bunch of tournaments. I've had a ridiculous amount of tournament success with this deck, historically as well in the past. Even back in 2010 and 2011, I played this deck, and I didn't play Warrior Ladies, but I still had a ridiculous amount of tournament success. I think the deck's ridiculous. It definitely plays to my strengths as a player, so I'm going to rate it a little bit higher than your average player, but the deck is just insane. I mean, it's just fucking cracked. I think it's like, it's one of those decks that nobody plays for some reason. It just has very low representation. But then when a good player decides to pick it up and play it, like, they just dominate. Like, yeah, that's pretty much it. I've made a bunch of videos on this deck. If you want to see more about that deck, tune into the rest of the videos on the channel. Next deck is Christia Horn. I think Christia Horn had its tournament. I'm going to be honest. In this configuration, it had its tournament. It lost the surprise factor. I think one of the things that was so powerful for it at RBET Rulers and why it topped RBET Rulers is because people didn't know the list and they didn't know what to do against it, and they were predicting too much. Like, they were thinking, oh, it probably has all this stuff because it's a Lightshorn deck, but it had cut all of that stuff. So it's kind of like it was preying on a lot of people's misinformation when it first was realized. I think if you want to see Christia Horn in the future, it's going to have to change a lot for it to top. I think it's clunkier than like your average Lightshorn deck because you have these Soul of Purity and Lights, but you don't have that like weird free win versus hero beat, and you're much more normal summon reliant because you don't have wolves. So I think that because you're like sacrificing Foolish Wolf, you're losing some of that aggro matchup potential for like late game Christia potential, but there are decks that just do late game Christia better than this deck. And so yeah, I also think this deck has some like pretty glaring weaknesses, like Skill Drain, Light Mirror completely shut off this deck. Like, you just have no outs, or you have like maybe up to 5 outs post board, but like, do you preemptively board in all 5 versus something like Diva Hero, or what? Like, how do you do that? Like, do you just assume they're gonna have Light Mirror? Do you side in some of them and just hope you see them? Like, it just doesn't have great matchup spread. It's got all the same issues Lightshorn has, but even a little bit more. Because you have to sacrifice the power of the wolves, you don't have as good a matchup against Hero Beat. I think this deck is in a bad spot right now, and results are definitely reflecting that. It's not been putting up results. All right, the next deck I want to talk about is the better Christia deck, or the more consistent Christia deck, which is Fairies. This is a second place list from an 100-person tournament in, I was on the East Coast. Fuck, I'm not going to remember the name of the store, but someone got second place with this list. Tommy Dangs also had a lot of success with this in SoCal. A very different list. He plays Herald of Purple Light, Soul Release, a lot of interesting tech cards. I recently uploaded a video with his list. You can definitely go check that out. I've uploaded a billion variations on this deck. I think this deck is incredibly powerful. It has a great Blackwing matchup. It has a great aggro deck matchup. You can play a lot of the most powerful cards in the format. Archlord Christia is just an insane card. Like, I honestly think that this deck is so insane that you don't even have to play Archlord Christia. I've played a lot of variations without it, and I think it's still a great deck. You can play this deck in a bunch of different ways. It's very adaptable. It's very fluid with the metagame, and I think it will always be a top meta contender, in my opinion. I think it will always be up there. Again, these are not in order, but yeah, no, I think it's like definitely one of the strongest decks, if not the strongest deck in the format. And yeah, I think it's a sick deck. Fucking shit. Watch my other Fairy videos. Next deck I want to talk about is Valhalla deck. Valhalla has a lot of potential, I think. I think Valhalla decks have a lot of potential. This is something I've been playing recently. I played this on the channel. I played it on stream as well. This is a Valhalla Virus Tethius deck. This deck is disgusting. Obviously, when you resolve one of your combos, either the Tethius combo, which is just Tethius plus draw 1 card, or resolving a dark monster, one of your dark fairies with Eradicator or Deck Devastation Virus, that can be absolutely crushing. Mausoleum's great in this deck. You get to play Vanity's Ruler, which is an inherently unfair card. You get to max Christia. You get to play a lot of Heralds. I think we might even see more heralds in these types of decks moving forward. Maybe less Chaos Sorcerer, less Gores, stuff like that, and just more of the interactive pieces, more of the fairies to make your Tethius even more powerful. This deck also gets to play Dark Valkyria to a pretty high level. I think this card is very slept on in the format. It's just a way to gain extra value without overcommitting into something like Torrential Tribute or that. And then going first is just a really annoying threat. Like if you're playing against a hamster deck or a deck that needs to stick a recruiter like Fairies or Zombies, and you go normal summon Dark Valkyria, it's just like they basically can't effectively set into your Dark Valkyria. So it allows you to like sort of amass a turn 1 advantage while not overcommitting to the board with something like another normal summon. I think Valhalla decks definitely have potential. I'm excited to see what people do with them moving forward. I think that they are definitely up there with like some of the more scary decks to face off against as well. All right, next deck, Gravekeepers. I think Gravekeepers is really fucking good. I think Gravekeepers is just like a really strong deck. It's slept on for sure. This is a list I played recently in a tournament. I won that tournament, so obviously it's a good list, right? Yeah, I uploaded that whole video to my channel. So if you guys want to watch me play this deck and go more into detail with in it on that video, check it out. Check it out. Go check that tournament replay stuff. The sauce. Gravekeepers is good. It has potential. Not a lot of people are playing it at high tournament level, but I think you definitely could and have a lot of success with it if you are a strong player and you know what you're doing, basically. Next deck that I think has a lot of potential is Lightshorn Machina. This is a list that's very similar to Times2's list that's been very popular. It plays like Triple Avarice, Triple Force. I think actually the best list is to cut all these trap cards, and I've made videos on very similar lists where I'm to this concept that I'm talking about. Cut all the trap cards, just add a shitload more Lightshorns, and then just play like a combination of Lightshorn plus Machina. Not necessarily like the Christia Lightshorn deck, but a similar sort of thought process to that. Fortress plus JD is like really strong. And so I think you want to be playing like more Judgment Dragon, more unfair shit, and less of these like 1-for-1 spot removal cards. And I think you definitely do want to play limiter removal in these types of decks, just because that card is a free win. So this list is similar to the lists that have been going around, and I think these lists have potential, but I think this list is just a little bit too fragile. I think you need to add some more juice to it. I think you need to add some more sauce to it. All right, next deck. Diva Frog. I'm not going to show you guys a list because it's functionally just Junkfrogs, but with divas instead and salvages and stuff. I think Diva Frog, again, it can top with bracket luck similar to Junkfrog, but you're very weak to pulling the rug and you're very normal summon reliant, unlike the Hero Frog decks. So I think you need to have some bracket luck. I think you need to dodge pulling the rug. And then on top of that, I do think it has some interesting strengths. I think the Diva Frog deck gets to play Deck Devastation Virus because you can Diva into Catastor, set Deck Dev, or you can have Caius or Vanity's Fiend to turn on your Deck Dev. So that is obviously very good. That does improve a lot of matchups. But at the same time, you lose that weakness to something like Fossil Dyna because Junk Synchron can attack over Fossil Dyna. So I don't know. I'd put it in a similar tier to Junk Frogs. I think they're very comparable. You do get to play some more water synergistic cards like Salvage, Moray of Greed, but ultimately those are just filler cards anyway, and I think that it's functionally the same. Like a lot of the time you're just accomplishing the same thing the Junk Frog deck is, and that's why I'm putting it in the same tier. Alright, next deck. Black Wings. Like, come on, let's be real. Aw, shit, I just fucking closed it. No, come back. This is Monster Gamer's Blackwing list. I think Blackwings is fucking great. Yeah, he won RBET with this main deck configuration, and then it recently topped RBET IRL, not Moreno Valley. It topped RBET IRL at Card Addiction in Fullerton. So the same exact list. I think this list is pretty cracked. I think he has a really good handle on the deck. I think a lot of players have been playing variations of Blackwings and having a lot of success. And I don't think this deck is going anywhere. I just think it's a really strong, really fast, really aggressive deck. I think it's actually an incredibly skill-intensive deck. Like, they really, really underplay how hard it is to play Blackwings well at a top level. I think once you've gotten to that point where, like, okay, you've won your first 2 rounds of the tournament, now you're playing against everyone who has prepared for your deck. Everyone has matchup experience against you. Everyone has a sideboard plan for you. Everyone knows what to do against you, so you really have to outplay them. you have to outplay them. You have to be doing some different shit with your play in order to beat people with a deck like this. And I think people really underrate how hard it is to do well with Blackwings and how much skill it takes to do well with the Blackwings this late into their meta dominance. The deck has fallen a bit out of favor in the last few months. It has seen a lot less meta representation with innovations that have made it harder to compete. But I still do think it is a top dog in the format, and I think if you're playing out of your mind with this deck, you can pretty much expect to win. I think Monster Gamer was also playing this at Nats, and he had an X1 and 2 record, which made him barely miss the top cut. But I think Blackwings is a really strong deck. Definitely have to place it in the can win a tournament tier, because it's proven time and time again, like if you sleep on this deck, you will get destroyed by it. And if you're playing hot with this deck, then you will have a good tournament, most likely, as long as you're drawing well. All right, next deck I want to talk about is Vayu Turbo. I think Vayu Turbo, again, one of those decks. Shit, do I not have a Vayu Turbo list? What the fuck? God damn it. Look up Matt K's first place Vayu Turbo list with Compulsory and Kaiku and Pulling the Rugs. That's the list I was going to pull up. The first place list from US Nats. I think this deck can win a tournament for sure. I am consistently underimpressed with this deck, but it wins tournaments, so hey, here we are. It can definitely win a tournament, right? All you need is to draw Burial, Brain Control, Dark Armed, and then fucking mill Vayu Sirocco, and you're killing it. And that happens more consistently than you'd think. It happens a lot more consistently than you'd think. And I think it definitely has a lot of potential to win the tournament. Plus, he gets to play Royal Oppression, which is just a devastating card against so many decks. Like, it's just such a crushing card for so many decks. It's one of those cards where it's like, if you don't draw the out to Royal Oppression, you're probably going to lose to it backed up with an Armed Wing. And then on top of that, I actually think Armed Wing in general is in a good spot meta-wise, because the most popular deck right now is Hero Beat, and Armed Wing outclasses every monster in the Hero Beat strategy. So yeah, that's it. Give me 1 second. I got to cough, folks. This is a long video. All right, I'm back. All right, next deck, Gadgets, Get the Fuck Out tier. Not even going to show you a list. Morphtronics is a list that I think has a lot of potential, or a deck that has a lot of potential. This is a list that recently won a tournament. This is kind of a meme list. This list doesn't have like level limit in it. It doesn't have like some of the strong cards that you would expect to have in it, but I do think that Morphtronics as a strategy has a lot of potential. There's so many hidden synergies with a deck like this. I've published videos on it recently. I actually covered this deck when it won the tournament live, and it definitely looked impressive then, and it still continues to look impressive now. Definitely don't sleep on this deck. Check it out if you want to try out some little monster synergy deck. Has some weaknesses, let's be real. Deck Devastation Virus. Yeah, deck dev is tough, but you can play out of it with Limit Reverse into Morphtronic Self-On. So there is ways to combat it. There's ways to deal with it. And there's also ways to stall out versus your average deck dev decks, like Gravity Bind, Swords of Revealing Light, even Stumbling. Morphtronic Map can help you come back from it. So there's a lot of ways to play through deck dev that most other little synchro combo decks don't have. Maybe Zombies has a comparable position on playing out of it thanks to their like Book of Life, Call of the Honda return stuff. So it can definitely play out of it in a way that Quick Draw doesn't really have a great way of playing out of it. But yeah, definitely don't sleep on the deck. I think it still needs a lot of innovation. I think it's in that weird like has potential but needs a master. Needs like a goat. Needs a Morphtronic goat to really take the deck to the next level. Next deck I want to talk about is Pac-Man. I've been playing it on stream recently. I'll show you guys my most recent list that I built with my chat. This is my most recent Pac-Man Bountiful Artemis list. I think this deck is disgusting. I do not want to play against decks like this. I find it very frustrating to play against, obviously. But I think the deck is very good. I think it has a lot of potential. Maybe not that specific list, but you could definitely make something like this work. And it would not surprise me if this was a deck that started popping up here and there. And definitely punish players for maybe, skimping on Royal Decrees or cutting too much back row removal, and then all of a sudden you get faced up against something like this and you're like, oh shit, I can't out level limit Gravity Bind, Defissure backed up by like 18 negates. And it's just one of those decks that it has a built-in advantage engine similar to Frog's, You have Deslocuta and Bountiful Artemis. You're getting that extra +1 every single turn, and that's just a very powerful effect. You can't overwrite effects like that. You can't write them off. And then last but definitely not least is Codaris, and I put it in has potential because we don't even fully understand. We don't even fully understand the greatness that is Codaris. Codaris gives us everything. Praise be unto Codaris. Blessed Codaris. Thank you, my brothers in Codaris. But yeah, that's going to be my tier list for August 2023. I know that there are a lot of strategies I left out. We're doing a big zoom out here. But I think this pretty much captures my feelings on the format right now without, upsetting anybody, hurting anybody's fucking feelings that I placed their favorite deck low or high or whatever. These are not in order. This is not exactly an ordered ranking tier list because all of that is functionally subjective. I think this is a pretty accurate picture of what Edison format looks like right now. If we look at all of the tournaments that have been happening, if we look at just like what the top players have been playing, if we take into account like certain runs, like certain bracket luck, certain bracket amount, I just think this is an accurate depiction of what the format looks like as of right now. If you guys disagree with this, or if you think there's a deck I forgot to rank or whatever the fuck, just comment. Peace.